Is joining here. We're going to go ahead and kick off today's meeting. Welcome everybody to the April 2022 membership meeting for AIA Las Vegas, where today we'll be discussing the future of water in Southern Nevada. My name is Carlos Fernandez. I'm the Executive Director of AIA Las Vegas and AIA Nevada. Before we go ahead and kick it off to the program, I'd first like to acknowledge our 2022 AIA Las Vegas visionary sponsors, which is Clyde Jubal Wald and NIT. In addition to our 2022 AIA Las Vegas Platinum sponsors, which is BWNA, Grand Canyon Development Partners, Harris Consulting Engineers, and TJK Engineers Incorporated. Next, I'm going to kick it off here to Rick Van Diepen, who is the Committee on the Environment Chair for AIA Las Vegas, who'll go ahead and introduce Zane.
Thanks very much, Carlos. And thanks again for joining us, Zane. We're really looking forward to your presentation today. Zane Marshall is the Director of the Water Resources Department of the Southern Nevada Water Authority, where he's worked for the past 27 years. A Las Vegas native, Zane leads 5 divisions that oversee the management of water, land, and environmental resources, and the implementation of environmental restoration and compliance, climate change, and sustainability programs. Zane is a bachelor's as well as a master's from right here at UNLV, and he is also a 2014 graduate of the Keenan Flagler Business School's Water and Wastewater Leadership Center, as well as a 2015 graduate of the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce Leadership Las Vegas program, the second best class ever. Zane, I need to tell you that. Zane has served on the board of directors for the Alliance for Water Efficiency, on the board of directors for the Great Basin Bird Observatory, as a National Park Service volunteer member of the Devil's Hole Dive Team, and as an enlisted member of the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve. In 2007, Zane received UNLV's Environmental Studies Outstanding Alumni Award for leadership, contribution, and dedication to improve the environment. Thanks very much, Zane, and please accept this virtual rousing round of applause from all the AIA membership. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Rick. I really appreciate the introduction and appreciate Carlos's providing the opportunity for us to, or for me to speak to you today. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So, again, I work for the Southern Nevada Water Authority and the Las Vegas Valley Water District. SNWA was formed in 1991 and is a regional water agency that functions as a water wholesaler. And our primary responsibilities include long-range water resource planning, the construction and operation of regional water infrastructure that includes 2 treatment plants with a combined total capacity of 900 million gallons a day. We implement long-range water resource programs through a portfolio management approach. And we also have a large conservation program to reduce consumptive demands in the valley. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. So in Southern Nevada, our water supply is composed of really 2 major components. 90% comes from the Colorado River, from Lake Mead that we divert out at Saddle Island, and 10% from the Las Vegas Valley, from the groundwater through permits that are held by the Las Vegas Valley Water District and North Las Vegas. About 90% of our supply is 300,000 acre feet of water rights that we hold on the Colorado River. And just real quick, because I'm going to use that term or that metric a lot, an acre foot is an acre of land covered by a foot of water. It's just less than 326,000 gallons, or it's about the amount of water that 2 households in the Las Vegas Valley use in a year. So 300,000 acre feet is our allocation on the Colorado River. That's only about 1.8% of the total volume of water that's allocated amongst the 7 basin states and the country of Mexico. And that total volume is 16.5 million acre feet. It's important to understand when we think about water resources in the Las Vegas Valley that everything that is used indoors is recycled, or 99% is. So if water is used and goes into a drain, it then goes to one of 4 wastewater treatment plants where it is cleaned and discharged to the Las Vegas Wash and ends up in Lake Mead. And we can divert a like amount back out, so we get a return flow credit for that water. The water that is used outdoors, or that goes into a septic system, or that is used by an evaporative cooling system, is consumed and lost to the system. And so that is why our conservation programs are really focused on consumptive uses in the valley. If we have a use that's a non-consumptive use, an indoor use, we can just use that water over and over again. And it's also important to understand that about 40% of our demands in the valley are non-consumptive and about 60% are consumptive. And when you reuse that 40% over and over again, it extends our water supply by about 75%. So it's really important that we get those return flow credits, and we focus our conservation programs on consumptive uses. So you may have heard that we've been in a drought for a little while in the region, and this graph shows inflows into the Colorado River system at Lee's Ferry, which is the boundary between the upper basin and the lower basin. The graph here starts at the year 2000, extends to 2021, and over this period, you can see by the red bars that there have been 17 years below normal, and 5 years, the blue bars, above normal. And the black horizontal line is the historical average. So if you take the average since 1906, that average is about 14.7 million acre feet. So I mentioned earlier that the basin is there's 16.5 million acre feet allocated to the 7 basin states in Mexico. And the average use is between 14 and 15 million acre feet. So you can see there that the basin is over allocated, with the average being 14.7 million. And in the past 21 years or 22 years, we've seen the average has actually been about 12.3 million acre feet. So the actual demands exceed the volume, the average volume that's flowing into the system since the year 2000. And I guess it's important to know that there are a number of those years that are less than 11 million acre feet, which is the volume that we evaluated in one of our planning scenarios in this last water resource plan. And we'll talk about that a little more in just a minute. So it's also another point here is that in the first 2/3 of this period, we really talked about this as being drought. And drought is a word that might indicate to some that it will end at some point. And the current science suggests that with climate change and an increasing temperatures, that what we're seeing is actually permanent aridification of the basin. And so we're seeing, in some cases, average or close to average precipitation, but significantly less runoff because of increasing temperatures and increased evaporation and evapotranspiration. 2 of these years are the worst 2 on record, 2002 and 2021. And the years 2020 and 2021 are the worst 2 consecutive years in the entire recorded history of the basin since 1906. So things are not good, and they're expected actually to get worse as the climate scientists look into the future and better understand how increasing temperatures impact the hydrology of the Colorado River Basin. And this has obviously had an impact on reservoir elevations, as we have seen since 1999. At that point, the reservoir was 95% full, and today we're at 34%. I want you all to know that over this period of 22 plus years, that the 7 basin states in the country of Mexico have been working hard to make adjustments to policies and approaches to reduce the impact of drought and aridification on reservoir elevations. There have been a number of agreements that have been entered into and are in effect to cause Lake Mead and Lake Powell to be operated in concert with each other, to establish triggers to identify when the states will take or are taking shortages, so they'll reduce their demands or their allocation on the river, and to develop programs to fund conservation initiatives in the basin that causes more water to be left in Lake Mead. And to the point where the country of Mexico is banking water in Lake Mead, SNWA, California, Arizona are all banking water in Lake Mead. And most recently, there was a 500+ plan that was developed and entered into by the lower basin states, where there is a commitment to put another to spend as much as $200 million and conserve water so that another 500,000 acre feet is stored in Lake Mead. I think that's good for this slide. So those triggers that I mentioned earlier were established. The first set of triggers were established by the 2007 operational guidelines, and in August of last year, the Bureau of Reclamation, each month the Bureau of Reclamation does a 24-month study, so it's a 24-month projection into the future of what reservoir elevations are going to look like. And based on that 24-month study, in the August projection, looking to the January elevation, they determined that the elevation of Lake Mead would be at or below elevation 1075, and that triggered the first shortage. So the first shortage in history was triggered in August of last year, and so that means that Nevada's allocation is reduced by 21,000 acre feet, and you can see here in this graphic that that the triggers are set by two different agreements: the 07 guidelines and then the drought contingency plan. So there's a trigger at elevation 1090, at 1075, at 1050, 1045, and 1025. And currently we're at about elevation 1062. And in total, if we go through all of those triggers, the most amount of shortage that Nevada would take is 30,000 acre feet. So that gives us a reduced allocation of 270,000 acre feet. It's important to understand here that below elevation 1025, there is no agreement. So we could take additional shortage if the reservoir dropped below 1025. And in our resource planning effort, we have contemplated an additional 10,000 acre feet of shortage. So for a total of a reduction of 40,000 acre feet. And I think that's probably good there. So we are contemplating, so this is a 24-month projection. So these are model projections of Lake Mead elevations, and the Bureau of Reclamation produces maximum probable inflow at the 90 percentile, most probable at the 50 percentile, and minimum probable at the 10th percentile. And you can see here that the expectation or the projection is that Lake Mead elevations will continue to drop. The solid horizontal lines are the 07 guideline triggers, and the dotted horizontal lines are the drought contingency plan triggers. And so we're below the first two triggers, just below elevation 1075, and the reservoir is expected to drop below the next trigger, which is 1050 by about, so the January elevation is what is important. So if we use the most probable inflow, we're looking at January of 2024, possibly being below the next two triggers, actually the 1050 and the 1045. And there are scenarios where we can be below 1050 by as early as January 2023. So, so our resource plan, again, we look at what hydrologic conditions might be into the future. We use a scenario approach and contemplate a reduction in the volume of water that would be available to us due to the reservoir elevation hitting these various shortage triggers into the future. And again, we add another 10,000 acre feet of shortage in the worst case scenario, which is this scenario. So in our resource plan, which we just finished in January of this year. It was finalized by our board. We use 3 different hydrologic scenarios, 2 different demand scenarios, and then a scenario with an adjusted gallons per capita per day, which is a metric that's important to us in terms of volume of water that's used in the valley. So this scenario here shows the worst case scenario for inflow. So we use a 14.7 million acre foot scenario, which is the historical average, a 12.9 million acre foot scenario, which is a little better than what we've seen over the past 22 years, and then this 11 million acre foot scenario, which is a little worse than what we've seen for the past 22 years, but is not out of the realm of possibility. And what I'm showing here are the 3 2007 guideline triggers by the solid red lines, lake mead elevations by the blue line, and then the dotted line below there is elevation 875, which is approximately dead pool, which is where Lake Mead cannot release water downstream to the states of Arizona, California, and the country of Mexico. The note on the side there says that over the most recent 22 years, there's been 9 years with inflows less than 11 million acre feet. And with the input from climate scientists, we believe that this scenario is maybe not likely, but definitely, again, in the realm of possibility. So when we do a resource plan, we want to be able to demonstrate that we can meet our community's needs even under this circumstance or this scenario. So with reservoir conditions or reservoir elevations in decline, one of the questions that we had in the early 2000s was, at what point will we not be able to access Lake Mead? Is that a real threat? And what can we do about it? And in about 2005, we started a planning effort for the 3rd intake and the low lake level pumping station. So here, this diagram shows all 3 of our intakes. And we understood early on that the first 2 intakes were vulnerable to reservoir elevation decline. So from 2005 to 2015, we worked on the planning and construction of the 3rd intake, which gives us access. Its intake elevation is at about 865, and it gives us access to all operational levels of Lake Mead. And then the 3rd intake was completed in the low lake level pumping station was completed in 2020, and that allows us to pump water from that lowest elevation. And we expect by December of 2023 that we could be below the operational level of intake 2. So just in time, really, in terms of us bringing those facilities on and making them operational. That was a cost of about $1.5 billion to the community. And again, it took about 15 years for planning and development of those pieces of infrastructure. So this type of infrastructure, again, it's expensive and it takes a long time to plan, design, and construct. It's important to know that the 3rd intake and low lake level pumping station does not give us access to more water, just to the water we had access to with intakes 1 and 2. It's really just a resiliency project to, again, give us access at very low reservoir conditions. I had one other point that I wanted to make here. Well, I'll move on and if I remember, we'll see. So in our resource planning effort, we use a portfolio approach to our resources. And we essentially have 3 buckets of resources that we look at to meet our community demands under those three different hydrologic scenarios that I mentioned earlier. And these buckets are permanent resources, which again include Colorado River allocation, local groundwater, unused Colorado River water that's held by other Nevada state contractors, tributary conservation on the Virgin and Muddy Rivers. We also have temporary resources that we've accumulated over the past 30 years or so. These include groundwater bank here in the Las Vegas Valley, where we've injected groundwater into the local aquifer. We have an interstate bank with Arizona and California. And then again, we have water stored or banked in Lake Mead. And I want to mention that because of the banking programs that in the water that Nevada, Arizona, California, and Mexico have banked in Lake Mead elevations today are 60 feet higher than they would be without those banking programs. So, so a significant impact in terms of mitigating reservoir decline due to those banking programs. And then we also identify future resources in our resource plan. These are things like transfers and exchanges on the Colorado River that are made available by advanced wastewater treatment plant construction, potential desalination, and partnerships on the Colorado River, similar to like the 500 plus plan that we entered into here at the end of last year. Transfers and exchanges on the Virgin River, so additional purchase of water rights on the Virgin River. We also have groundwater rights in Garnet and Hidden Valleys and Tikaboo and Three Lake Valleys. These are valleys just north of the Las Vegas Valley. So those are the future, and there might be others as well. The goal in our resource plan, though, is to meet our community's needs as long as we can with permanent resources, to avoid building permanent demand on our temporary resources to the extent that we can, and push out future resources as far as we can. So that's kind of the principles of our plan, or goals of the plan. The future resources, as you can imagine, can be are extremely expensive. So there is no cheap water. There are no easy solutions left in the region. And when we look at developing future resources, it's in the hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to bring in additional resources to the community. So one of the things that we're experiencing is rapid growth, and a little unexpected with the pandemic. In 2020, we thought that the pandemic was actually going to slow growth, and it pretty much did just the opposite. So the graph on the left shows new connections in the Las Vegas Valley Water District service area, and the blue bars are 2021. And you can see that that growth in some months doubled from the previous year. And the graph on the right is the Center for Business and Economic Research population projection, which we use to generate our demand projections for our resource plan. And the dotted line, blue line, is the SEBR 2020 projection, and the solid line is the SEBR 2021. So within 1 year, SEBR's population projection, was adjusted by 200,000 within the planning horizon, the 50-year planning horizon. So, and we experience this from time to time. We understand that that SEBR uses REMI model and models. All models are wrong in one way or another, and so we build we use this projection, but we also develop another population or demand scenario to help make sure that we capture potential error in the population projection. It's also important to understand that with climate or with population increases in the valley, climate change will have an impact on water demands. And this graphic tries to demonstrate that we think climate change will cause an increase by about 10 gallons per capita per day over the next 20 years. and this impact is due to increasing temperatures in the valley, and also an increasing growing season. So the warm up occurs earlier, and with hotter temperatures, our customers, one of the behaviors is they start watering earlier and want to water their plants more with increasing temperatures. And so this projection is based on some downscale climate modeling that we've done for Clark County and work with Water Research Center to try and get a handle on how we think climate change will impact demands. We're also contemplating about a 1 to 2 gallons per capita per day increase due to system aging, and we have initiatives to address maintenance of our distribution system to address leaks and push down that additional demand from system loss. So our conservation programs really we had conservation programs, in the late 1990s, but the drought started in about 2000, and in 2002 was that lowest year on record, and it was about it was the lowest year on record. In some ways, measuring it was 25% of normal. So we developed a conservation plan and really ramped up our conservation initiatives. We changed some of the codes and ordinances in the valley. That's when we restricted the placement of turf, no turf in front yards and only 50% of turf in the backyards, and set the time of the day of week, time of day watering schedules, seasonal watering schedules, and increased our incentives for water smart landscaping and water efficient technologies. And those programs were very successful. So this graphic shows that with a 49% increase in population since 2002, we've reduced our per capita water use by 48%, and our Colorado River consumptive use by 26%. So these conservation programs work. Our community has been very responsive to these conservation programs, and we're doubling down moving forward on conservation initiatives and developing new programs going forward. In the last resource plan, we've also established a new conservation goal. And that goal is 86 gallons per capita per day. So today we sit at about 110 gallons per capita per day, and this goal is by 2035. So we actually have a long way to go as a community to achieve this goal, and we're focused through a number of efforts that include landscape efficiency, cooling efficiency, water loss control, irrigation compliance, and new development efficiency to get to that 86 gallons per capita per day. And these initiatives have both backward looking. So we have initiatives to increase efficiency in existing development, and also forward looking programs to ensure that new development is more efficient in order to meet this goal. Some of the programs and policies that are underway, I'll just hit a few of these. We're looking to convert cool season grass to warm season grass in the community. Again, enhance leak resolution using automated metering infrastructure. So these are meters that are similar to what NV Energy uses, in the sense that they communicate their meter data on a near real-time basis, and allows us to identify leaks and have a better enhanced communication with our customers. We're focused on asset management within our own infrastructure. The Water District has put a moratorium on new golf courses. We're developing a large water user policy for water users that that have large consumptive water use. So this might be, for example, a bottling plant that distributes their products outside of the valley. You may have heard about AB 356, which is a new state law that was signed last summer by our governor, which prohibits the use of Colorado River water to irrigate non-functional turf in non-single family residential development. We have a focus on cooling efficiency standards, and then the Water District also has passed a new service rules that does not allow the placement of turf in new development, with the exception of schools, parks, and cemeteries. And then we have a number of other programs that we're working on. We're looking to reduce golf course water budgets. They're currently on a budget of about, I think it's 6.2 acre feet per acre, and we're looking to reduce that somewhere closer to 4. We're also looking to establish pool size regulations and limit pool size development in single family residents in the community. We're working with our purveyor members to identify ways to ensure that the parks are irrigating the turf they have and landscaping as efficiently as they can. We're also looking at implementing pricing changes to affect more efficient use of water at higher tiers, right, at the higher water user levels. So this new law, again, prohibits the use of Colorado River water to irrigate non-functional turf. The law also required the establishment of an advisory committee that met for 6 months last year, and they came up with a set of definitions for functional and non-functional turf that they sent to our board of directors, and they adopted those at the end of the year. So what is non-functional turf? It's things like neighborhood entries, streetscapes, medians, roundabouts. It is the turf that is there for ornamental purposes, really. It's not being used for recreational activities. And typically the only person that uses this or that walks on this grass is someone who is mowing it. I mentioned this already. The Water District recently approved a resolution to prohibit the installation of turf in schools, parks, and cemeteries. And this is really about making new development, or trying to get new development to be as efficient as possible, and have as limited of consumptive water uses as possible. We're also working with stakeholders in the community to look at how we can minimize or limit evaporative cooling. It is the second largest consumptive water use in the valley. Our board approved a moratorium on water-cooled HVAC systems at the end of last year, and we're currently reaching out to stakeholders in the community to get feedback and identify the best way to move this forward. I think this slide pretty much says the same thing. We're really just looking, we're starting a contract with the engineering department at UNLV this month to do research. We have a number of other entities that we're collaborating with to look for the best technologies, really, to avoid evaporative cooling in the valley, but allow economic development to continue. So we have incentive programs. You may have heard about the Water Smart Landscaping Program in the valley, which we pay $3 per square foot for the first 10,000 square feet of turf converted, and $1.50 for every square foot after that, with no limit. We also have a water efficiency technology rebate program where we will rebate the replacement or modification of existing equipment with efficient technology. And my staff manage those rebate programs, and we're happy to answer any questions about those programs, I can get you in touch with my staff that manage this. Well, we also have a program where we rebate water smart controllers for irrigation. And there are some great case studies out there of water saved, money saved in using those controllers. So this issue of pool size is interesting in the sense that there are developers in the valley that are building single family residents with very large pools. And we have gotten some comments from our community about pools, and we think that we need to establish an ethic in the community that this is consumptive demand on our water supply, and it's something that we want to limit. So we're looking at capping pool size at 600 square feet for new single-family residents. I mentioned bottling plants earlier, so my staff are working on and working with the purveyor members and local municipalities on a large water user policy. So it turns out that we have really in the region one of the most secure water supplies, and that is because of our 50-year water resource planning activities and the infrastructure that we've developed that gives us access to Lake Mead at all operational levels. We are desirable for bottling plants and data centers for other reasons as well. And so we need to be able to evaluate these new businesses and the water footprint impact that they have on our community, and work with the municipalities to determine if they're appropriate or not. And so my staff is working again with members of the community to try to figure out how best to do that, to conduct that evaluation, to determine when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate, if we have somebody that has a very large consumptive water demand. So this is a little bit of information about our water efficiency technology program, and the graphic on the right there shows what our 2021 benchmark was for water saved, and what our actual water saved volume was, 197 million gallons, and our benchmark for 2022. The reason for the success in 2021 was really a big program we had with the Clark County School District, where we converted over 20 football fields to artificial turf from grass, and that was a very successful program. It helps them with maintenance, reducing maintenance costs, and we saved a lot of water going forward. So, and this is the program that we'll use to help incentivize retrofitting cooling systems and reducing the overall cost of trying to find new technologies for existing systems that are more efficient going forward. So this graphic shows how each of the conservation initiatives that we have in our current resource plan will get us from 123 gallons per capita per day, which is the current GPCD adjusted due to impacts from climate change and system aging. So from that 123 down to our goal of 86 gallons per capita per day by 2035. And it takes every initiative. And so the point that I want to make here is that there is no one sector or one conservation initiative that will solve our problem in terms of being able to reduce demands so that we can meet our community's needs over the next 50 years. We have to reduce consumptive uses, reduce our community's GPCD, and this GPCD is a consumptive GPCD. And it takes everybody and every initiative to get there. There are no silver bullets. And so I hope you all can help us with these initiatives and promote our programs to achieve that goal. So this is kind of a summary slide. These graphics are what we have in come right from our resource plan. They are the scenario, the inflow scenario of 11 million acre feet, and then 3 different demand scenarios. So the graphic on the left is our low demand scenario, and the red line is the demand line, and the dark blue block is the permanent resources, and the light blue is a permanent future supply. So we have an agreement with Metropolitan Water District in California to build an advanced wastewater treatment facility, and we've committed $750 million, and we'll receive somewhere between 25,000 and 40,000 acre feet. So we're evaluating 25,000 acre feet here in these scenarios from that project. And so if we have lower demand, lower population, which is the SEBR projection, and we get to that 86 GPCD by 2035, we can meet all of our community's needs through the year 2072. The middle graphic shows a higher demand projection, and what we've done here is just adjusted the population projection by 15% at the midpoint of the projection and up by 25% at the end point of the projection. And this shows that by about 2045, we'll need to utilize those temporary resources. And at the very last few years of the projection, we'll need to begin to bring on future resources. So in about the year 2070, 2071. And the final projection is the upper demand. And if we do not achieve 86 GPC, if we only achieve 98 GPCD by 2035. And this shows that we will need to bring on temporary resources by as early as 2028, 2029. And we use those for a little while, and then the MET project comes online, and then we begin to pretty significantly rely on temporary resources in about 2034, and then bring on those future resources in 2055. So you can see by different demand projections and achieving different GPCDs, how that affects when we'll need to bring on either those temporary resources or future resources to meet our community's needs. So with that, I will take any questions. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Zane. It's always sort of depressing and yet a relief when I see these this information. I'm a hardcore Las Vegas booster and a defender of our resources, and our resource planning has been so great for so many years, that when people talk about well, Vegas is going to run out of water or anything, it's just like, yeah, well, talk to me when your city is recycling 90% or more of your of your water, and then you can sort of throw stones. So I think it's fantastic what we've done, and it's also really encouraging, I think, to see that if we can get to 86 gallons per person per day, basically we're going to be pretty safe for 50 plus years, so that's something I think we should be really proud of, and use that as encouragement to to help us get past these milestones, so it's really interesting. Thanks very much, and it's just good to know that our water agencies are really looking with that kind of future in mind, and counting on our city continuing to grow, because historically we always have. So I think that's fantastic. I have a couple of questions. However, I wanted to kind of open it up to the audience. So if anybody, any of the participants are interested, please just unmute yourself, and we'll let you talk. Or actually, if you can raise your hand, so hit the little raise hand icon at the bottom if anybody'd like to ask questions. We'd much rather hear your voice than respond to a chat.
Rick, there are a few chats on the question there.
Okay, yep, sorry, I had the wrong thing up there. Let's see. Okay, I just want to make sure there wasn't anybody raising their hand first. Okay, well, there's a comment that from John Torpy saying, you know, we would have access to more water if we didn't use the dam for power. That's probably not any kind of option, Zane, right? LA uses most of that power from.
That's right. That's right. And I'm not sure I quite understand that statement. But I want to say a couple of things though in relation to that. Mm-hmm. So two things are those trigger elevations for taking shortage are with the intent of protecting certain elevations in both Lake Mead and Lake Powell. So to start out, Lake Powell is just below right now 3525. And the basin states are keen on protecting elevation 3490 because that's when Lake Powell stops producing power. And the important thing about that is that the whole Western grid is dependent on Lake Powell if it goes down. So if we have a brownout or a big blackout in the Western grid, the only way you bring it back up is with Glen Canyon Generating Station. So it's critically important to the region to maintain power production at Glen Canyon. And then at Hoover Dam, the reservoir stops producing power at about, the generating station at about elevation 900. And I said that dead pool is, I think dead pool is about 885, 890, something like that. So that's when the dam can no longer drop water downriver to Arizona, California, and Nevada. I mean, in Mexico.
Got it. Thank you. And Ethan had a question. I think you kind of answered it in your previous slide, but maybe you could kind of expand on it. If we maintain our current growth levels and consumption levels, so not getting down towards 86, but staying at like 112, I assume, right? If we stay at that consumption level, when would our permanent resources be depleted?
I don't have that graphic, but we moved to temporary resources, which are, so we have about 8 years of last year's demands banked in temporary supplies. And so we would move to temporary supplies, I think, by about 2027, 2028. And then, you know, I don't know how long it would, I don't really know how long it would take us to exhaust those resources off the top of my head, but it's not too long in the future where we wouldn't be able to support, you know, new development in the valley.
Yeah. And can you kind of paint a little picture for us about, I mean, I saw all the water, you know, water efficiency technologies and that, you know, on that chart that we would need to get to 86. But can you kind of paint a picture of maybe what that would look like, the adjustments we would have to make just as the average, you know, homeowner? So,
you know, one of the major efforts is the removal of non-functional turf in the Las Vegas Valley. So we have until January 1 of 2027 to remove all of that non-functional turf out of the valley in non-single family residents. We also want to incentivize the removal of turf in single family residents, and we've done a lot of that, and we have a huge response from the community in pulling that turf out. So, you know, and particularly the cool season grass, because it is, you know, it is the least efficient use of water that we have in the valley.
Is that like Bermuda grass or more like
tall fescue?
Fescue, okay.
Yeah, tall fescue is really the consumptive, you know, has the highest consumptive demand.
Okay.
So we need to get that turf out of the community, particularly not the non-functional turf that people aren't using. And future development has to be as efficient as it possibly can. So it's limited turf. We need to have a serious talk about evaporative cooling, and so light industry and even hotels are going to have to look hard at alternatives for evaporative cooling, and we're looking at ways to try and incentivize conversion of existing infrastructure, and looking for new technologies or ways that existing technologies can be applied to meet our needs. It's just evaporative cooling is the least expensive way to cool a space, and when energy is as expensive as it is, and there's a differential between energy costs and water costs, it's hard to make that pencil out. But we can make more energy. We can't necessarily make more water, and so we're going to have to make some hard decisions about how we cool our indoor spaces moving forward.
Got it. One of the big topics recently in kind of energy and water conservation generally is about ongoing monitoring based like commissioning and basically monitoring in real time water and energy use, and being able to make adjustments to if there's any leaks or any valves getting stuck, things like that. And it's been something that's kind of been on my mind for years, when because the water authority has that data, right? It's all digitally accessed, and it just seems like it'd be great if there was some way to give the consumer feedback that says, hey, we're showing a spike in your use. So obviously you've got a broken pipe, or you left a hose running, or your pool has a leak, or something like that, you're way out of whack based on the trending of your normal energy use. It would be awesome if that feedback could get back to the consumer faster than at the end of the month when we get the bill and there's you've used 2,800 gallons, and you didn't even know it.
Right. So that's
options for that.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So that's really at the purveyor level, right? So the cities of Henderson, North Las Vegas, and the Las Vegas Valley Water District, Boulder City, Big Bend Water District. City of North Las Vegas and Henderson have, or City of North Las Vegas at least has full implementation of automated metering infrastructure, AMI. And that gives them the ability to do what you just described, to have that real-time data stream, and to reach out to customers that have leaks and try to help them address that leak as soon as possible. The Las Vegas Valley Water District has about 2/3 of the population in the Las Vegas Valley, and does not have full implementation of AMI quite yet. So they do monthly meter reads, but they are in the process of implementing AMI and should have that complete by, I believe, the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. And we are super excited about it, right? Because it does give us a lot of capacity, ability to engage our customers, help them to address leaks. We're also looking at ways that we can help them address leaks. So particularly for vulnerable parts of our community that are financially challenged, if they have a leak and they get a large bill and it's a surprise to them, it's much more difficult, right, for them to deal with a surprise bill, right? That's 2 or 3 times what their regular bill is, and we want them, and so we have to, in some cases, write off some of those bills. We do bill forgiveness.
That's great.
But we need them to fix the leak, right, from a water perspective. And so we're evaluating strategies for providing insurance programs for our customers, right? So if they have a major leak, if they have a main break or something like that between the meter and their house, those things can be really expensive. And so we're looking at strategies to do that, and potentially developing a pilot program for next year to help customers both identify leaks, so maybe a voucher program with certified plumbers, and then an insurance program to help them actually fix the leak. So
that's great. Let's see. How can here's another question. How can architects in particular partner with SNWA to support the organization's conservation efforts?
Well, so, one of the things that I think about is urban heat island impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think design concepts that help the community with urban this heat island impact are very important to look at trying to design properties both from a landscaping perspective and a facility perspective or a constructed facility perspective that are water efficient, right? So to use the right plant materials that are appropriate for the region, and that are and that they're able to adapt to changing climate conditions, right? So we anticipate more days above 110 because of climate change, right? And so the plant materials that are chosen need to be able to withstand those types of changes, right? And so landscape architects are really important for thinking through those elements of a development. And then the indoor water use we're not so concerned about, right? Because that water is reused in the community through our return flow credits, but it's still we want to create an ethic. You've all probably heard the ads in the past that it's a desert out there, and so we want to promote that, yeah. Right? We try to create as being living in Las Vegas an illusion of living in an oasis, right? But we'd like people to understand that it really truly is a desert, and we need to be responsible in the way that we use this limited resource.
Got it. Are the advancements in hot water technologies out there also a way to reduce energy use?
I don't know the
recirculating pumps, and I'm seeing a lot more interest in like heat pump water heaters, things like that.
So from a hot water perspective, I know that we have had some incentive programs for those. I think we've had some mixed results in the past, but I don't know recently. Again, if it's an indoor efficiency, something that improves indoor efficiency, it doesn't really impact our water supply, but it reduces water bills for our customers, right? So they have to buy less water. If they, like a recirculation pump, they don't have to turn the shower on and leave it on for 20 minutes to get hot water, right? So, just from a sustainability perspective, right? We have to lift less water. We have to treat less water if people are using less water in their homes. So, right.
Well, yeah, and I'd love to kind of segue on that point. That's perfect, because if you could just kind of talk about the energy water kind of nexus, right? Because I know the Water Authority is, from what I remember, the largest energy user in the state, and because we treat and pump so much water every day, right? Can you kind of just talk about that for a minute?
So
and maybe about your, the Water Authority's continued investment in renewable energy, and and reducing your your energy use as well.
So we do. We use a climate footprint tool internally. So we calculate our carbon footprint as an organization, and power demand in our organization that related to pumping and treating water is obviously our largest source of carbon generation, and we have for a number of years worked to incorporate renewable power supplies into our energy portfolio. And we have a new development that we're working to get permitted through the BLM in El Dorado Valley for an additional PV facility to add to our portfolio. But we really buy most of our power through WAPA through a regional power mix and through NV Energy. And so there's some, that's a mix of generation sources that include coal and natural gas as well. So, but in general, water is heavy. It's, approximately a little over 8 pounds a gallon.
It never gets any lighter. Yeah.
Right. And we have to lift it, from the lake, push it through the river mountains and treated it at Alfred Merritt Smith or River Mountains facilities. And then depending on where people live in the valley, we're pushing it all the way up to the northwest part of the valley. So that takes a lot of energy. And I had a number, I can't find it right now, and or remember what the embedded power cost is for per unit volume of water, but it's I think the average house is it generates about as much carbon in terms of delivering water to a house as a person driving 1,000 miles in a car. So I forget what that
significant, yeah,
what that number is, but I remember relating it to driving. So it's not nothing, right? It's and so when you're thinking about using water, there's an embedded energy cost and carbon impact due to that water. So just like anything else that we do, right? I mean, you eat a steak, and the carbon footprint impact of a steak is not insignificant. So
sure. So on that note, we may have even sort of discussed this previously at a Green Building Council event in the past, but I was hoping you could kind of talk about maybe the future or any possibilities as we're moving towards 86 gallons per capita of doing things like incorporating gray water for landscape irrigation. It just seems to me that plants don't care if there's chlorine and if the water's filtered. So and if it's consumptive anyway, it just seems to me like it might make more sense to use that water on site or at least nearby, because it's going to be consumptive anyway. So what just want to see what you thought about gray water in general, and about the idea of using non-potable water or semi-treated water like we do on golf courses, let's say, or at least several golf courses, versus potable water for plant landscape irrigation.
So I think that by using gray water, it's consumptive, so it doesn't, from a water resource perspective, it doesn't improve our circumstance, right? Because that like you said, that water is being consumed, and there are challenges of using gray water. I think to the extent that we can capture and use stormwater to maybe solve a couple of problems, like stormwater runoff off of properties, and capture that and use that to potentially irrigate, water efficient landscaping in a development. I think there's some potential there. We don't get a lot of stormwater, right? Obviously, we only get about, on average 10 centimeters or 4 inches a year. And we only get that in about 3 storms. So, but to the extent that we can
design, catch it really quick,
right? But to the extent that we can design, our properties or our infrastructure in a way that puts that stormwater to some use, and also solves, again, like I said, pollutant issues, then that's a good thing. But gray water, because of our hydrologic cycle here in the valley, we're not big on using gray water, because again, it's a consumptive use. So we want to minimize. We don't want people to say, well, I'm using gray water, so therefore it doesn't, it's not a big deal. It's still a big deal because it's a consumptive use. So that's my thought.
Got it. Yeah, it just seems like it's one of the few uses that we could possibly be kind of minimizing that energy water, the embodied kind of energy in that water, by at least eliminating the treatment and the pumping loop, once or something.
Right. Yeah, and I think for that person, there might be in certain circumstances there might be some benefit. We've actually moved away from reuse facilities for irrigating golf courses, and we've
really?
actually decommissioned a couple of facilities in the valley because two things. The treated water was causing salinity issues in the golf courses, and they were having to sweeten that gray water with treated water anyways. And then we're also seeing an increase in nitrates in groundwater around those golf courses.
Oh, sure, that makes sense.
Right, because that reuse water had higher nitrate levels, and it's impacted both golf course irrigation and septic tanks have impacted our groundwater, and we're having to decommission some groundwater wells in certain parts of the valley and develop new ones to address some higher than acceptable nitrate levels in certain parts of the aquifer. The septic tanks is something that I should make a point about. We have an initiative to reduce the use of septic tanks, to connect septic tank users to the municipal sewer systems. And the Water District has just passed a service rule that does not allow customers who are connected to the municipal water supply to use septic systems, because all the water that goes into a septic system is lost and is not recovered and doesn't make it back to Lake Mead. We think that there could be a savings of I think between 7,000 and 8,000 acre feet a year with connecting septic systems to to the municipal sewer systems in the valley.
All right, how are we doing on time, Carlos?
We can take a few other questions. If not, we can start wrapping up.
Can you just kind of talk about maybe Zane about a couple of the more I don't want to call them zany ideas, but kind of Hail Mary passes, right? Like if we don't get to 86 gallons and we're running low on that 8-year reserve, right? Like I'd heard in the past about having Nevada offset the construction of a desalinization plant in Mexico or Southern California, and then basically trading that water with LA, and even like paying farmers in Imperial Valley to leave their cotton fields or cantaloupe fields fallow, even I was just visiting some friends in Redondo Beach, and it's like wall-to-wall turf there, and I think my friend said they don't even have like a water meter, like
right.
You don't even pay like basically a water bill. Like, it seems like at some point they need to be incentivized maybe by the upriver states, to actually start conserving water in Southern California.
Right. So all of those things that you mentioned, I think are potentially on the table moving forward. So, as in our community, our philosophy is that we need to set the example. And by setting the example, it puts us in a better position to negotiate solutions in the broader regional community, right? So if we walk into the room as having great success in conservation, it really puts us in a different position in terms of negotiating other solutions. If all we're doing is acting poorly and behaving poorly and pointing fingers at others and expecting them to solve our problems, we're not going to get anywhere, right? So that's important for us to be progressive and to be successful in the way that we use water here in Southern Nevada. Having said that, about 80% of the total demand in the Colorado River is agriculture, and a lot of that agriculture is to grow crops for livestock and for export to other countries, right? And so I think, given the conditions in the Colorado River, there is a need to have some hard conversations about how water is used, and not that I'm suggesting we have a disproportionate impact on agricultural communities, but we may be able to incentivize, we being the municipalities within the basin, may be able to incentivize and help pay for conservation programs. Ricky, it looks like you froze. Can you still hear me?
Yes, it certainly looked like you froze.
Okay, all right. So I think the agreement that we have with Metropolitan Water District to develop an advanced wastewater treatment plant where they will take wastewater and treat it to something close to drinking water quality, inject it into a groundwater reservoir, into an aquifer, and then pull that water out with wells at another location, treat it for drinking water, and serve it to customers. They'll meet some of their demands that way, and we'll take a portion of their allocation out of Lake Mead. So we'll do kind of a swap, help them to develop that water, that advanced wastewater treatment plant to produce that water in their neighborhood or their community, and then we'll take Colorado River water for that. I think desalination is another option in the future, but again, it's not a silver bullet. It's limited in terms of the total volume of water that can be produced. Well, just because of the energy and expense and time frame that it takes to build desalination. So that the newest desal plant in California is the Carlsbad facility. It's called Poseidon. It produces about 55 million gallons of water per day. I think it cost about $2 billion, and it took 15 years to permit and construct that facility. So again, no easy or cheap solutions. We're also doing collaborations with Metropolitan Water District and agricultural users in California to fallow some land on a limited basis. And I think the 500 plus plan also looks to do some of that in Arizona and California. So, and we're all working on these things, these solutions, as we move forward. Again, these agreements and projects take, in some cases, decades. And so we're looking, well into the future for identifying and laying the groundwork for new sources of supply into the future. I can't hear you, Rick.
Thanks very much, Zane. Really appreciate it. And I'll hand it off to Carlos to kind of wrap up.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much again, Zane, and thank you to all of you who attended this meeting today. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, please reach out to me and I can connect you with the Southern Nevada Water Authority, especially with any of the incentives that Zane has mentioned today. Thank you all again, and I hope you guys have a great evening.